voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Dave Thomas, standing by. It's CFL Draft Day. Dave, where were you when you heard Dennis Park sing the national anthem in 1994?
Well, back in the day, we were out on the farm, so we didn't have that fancy cable thing. I heard all about it, and then I had to find out when I went back to town to actually, we couldn't access it on YouTube or anything, so you had to find somebody that put the game on VHS. But we eventually found it. I'm not going to kid you, though. I was shaking in my boots when you started the show with that. I thought I was supposed to bring a harmonica along or something, because I'm guessing they'll be out in L.A. tonight.
They better be. It better be harmonica season again for Kings fans. It's all I know. Also, like I said, Justin Dunk from 3DownNation from our Rough Rider broadcast team is with us. It is CFL Draft Day. JD, do you remember that rendition of the Canadian National Anthem in Las Vegas in 1994 from Dennis Parks?
I was about 8 years old, so I don't remember it the way that you guys do, but I have heard it being referenced multiple times.
Yes. We're gonna find out if Dennis is still with us. We got to get him on the show at some point in the next 8 months for Rider Season. Whatever the anniversary day is, that's when we'll bring him on. It's CFL Draft Day starting at 4 o'clock. First off, Dave, you're going down to the stadium here in Regina. A lot of excitement. You got to talk to Jeremy O'Day yesterday, right? And to his own admission, he's like, that first round, it's a crapshoot.
Oh, absolutely it is, because not only are you trying to find the best available athlete and the best athlete that's going to go ahead and fit into your mix as far as what your needs are concerned on the roster, but you got to figure out, is this person likely to be coming to Canada and coming to Canada anytime soon? And he talked about his first round draft pick last year, how they kind of took a swing. Now, they didn't miss by any means. They just have to be patient with that pick to see whether or not offensive line Hergel is indeed going to pan out or not. So that's kind of the balancing act, and he didn't outright give it away, saying that he didn't think that they'd take a swing like that this year in the first round, but with the fourth overall pick, you never know.
Justin, probably no one in the country knows more about the league and the inner workings and going into this draft. Round one, from your lens, what are you looking at? What are we going to see? What do you think we're going to see, especially here for Rider Nation?
To me, the by far most intriguing part of this draft is the quarterback class. You have Taylor Elgersma and Curtis Rourke at the top. Rourke was selected in the 7th round by the San Francisco 49ers. Elgersma has 2 rookie minicamp invites, and I believe there's a lot of momentum there for him to potentially sign after one of those or potentially another team. Guys, he had over a dozen rookie minicamp invites. And for people that don't know that world very well, that's rare. Usually you get like 3 or 4, and the rookie minicamps are on 2 separate weekends, so you can only pick 2 to go to. So the fact that Elgersma had that many shows, I think, the NFL interest in him. The teams want to get him in the building and really see if he can transition from the Canadian game to the American game. But when we're talking about the CFL draft, I think that possibility is going to play into it. And Dave was talking about, for example, Kyle Hergel being selected by the Riders last year in the first round. Well, he actually had signed an undrafted free agent contract. So based on talking to people around the league, there is an excitement about Elgersma because he, at the moment, only has the rookie minicamps. That is part of the balancing act that Dave alluded to when you talk about the uncertainty with, are these guys actually going to be able to come to your team this year or not? But you talk to people around the league, and there is some excitement about Elgersma. There's excitement about Rourke too, but the fact that the 49ers used a 7th round pick on him in draft capital means you're probably not going to see him for at least a year, perhaps longer. So to me, that is really intriguing, that we could potentially have a Canadian quarterback selected, not just in the first round, because Trey Ford has done that recently, going 8th overall to Edmonton, but possibly high if a team gets really excited.
QB exempt from the ratio rule in the CFL, correct?
If you start a Canadian quarterback, it counts towards your 7 starters, but it is exempt based on how many you have to have on your game day roster.
So where does that play in? Do a lot of Canadian quarterbacks, maybe not to the level that Rourke and Elgersma, but is that the end of their career because of that in a way, Justin, for some young Canadian QBs?
I think it hurts. You look at some of these other skill positions where Canadians have been doing really well in recent years, right? You look at the Riders and Keane Schaefer-Baker, perfect example, a guy that's blossomed into a legit number 1 receiver. Of course, everybody knows about Brady Oliveira, what he's done with Winnipeg. those guys count towards the game day roster number. As a quarterback, you not only have to be that good to make the roster, you got to be a starter. There are only 9 starters in the league on any given week, or I guess 8 because there's always a team on a bye week. So it does make it that much more difficult for it to happen.
Will we ever see a change in that, do you think?
Let's get the commission on the line, man. That should be his first order of business, in my opinion.
Okay, Dave, call him quick. No, what do you think on that, Dave? Because, hey, covering the Huskies, Rams through the years down here, we don't have to look further than Mason Nias a few years ago, right? What's your take on that rule? Obviously, for me, not as entrenched as you guys. I've always thought it's something that needs to go. They need to reevaluate that.
I fully agree. You have to reevaluate, and not just for the product on the field, but also the potential momentum off of the field. Because if I'm a Canadian kid and I see, a guy slinging the football around, hey, I think I can do it too. And we all live on that dream. And to me, that's the momentum that you need. You heard the new commissioner come in and talk a little bit about engaging the younger core of fans. And if you engage them by having them throw a football around, that was his quote, right? I want every kid to have a football and throw it around. Well, if you're not able to throw it around because the rules really don't allow for it in the Canadian Football League, and the fact that there's no advantage to developing a Canadian quarterback, I fully am with you. Like, change the rule and give kids a shot to play. The other point that should be made, though, is that it also is depth, right? Because if you're going to go ahead and start a Canadian like Brady Oliveira, right, you've got to make sure that you've got a good Canadian in behind him so that you don't have to mix and match with your ratio in and out all season long. And that's what comes down to, in my mind, as well, with the Canadian quarterback and starting one. It's great for the ratio. It's great for, again, them on their merits alone. But also then if you're dependent upon that with ratio work, then you have to be able to have that second tier available as well.
Justin, for the last few months, Rider Nation, if you watch different, social media feeds, I'm sure you guys see it with 3Down as well. It's like there's a lot of Rider fans that think we need a receiver that can take the top off. I personally don't think. I think our receiver room is good, but that's just me. When you look at this draft and what's coming here, who would be the top Canadian receivers that we're going to see go today?
We kind of get into what Dave was talking about, right? The top player potentially on some people's boards and on the recent CFL Scouting Bureau was Eli Iomanner, who was selected in the 4th round by the Tennessee Titans. But he's going to be in the NFL for a while because of the draft capital invested. As far as receivers, likely coming to the CFL quickly, if not right away, Keelan White is going to be at the top of a lot of the, let's say, ready players who are going to come now, or the now players. I would imagine, Ethan Jordan, Taylor Elgersma's target at Wilfrid Laurier, is a guy that has that 4.4 kind of speed, can take the top off of defense. But, I'm with you. I don't necessarily think that that's something that the Riders need. They've shown that vertical threat element, when Sean Payne Jr. is healthy. Also, last year, Keyshawn Johnson had a great run at the end of the season. I think Kean Schaefer-Baker can get vertical on you quick from his slot back position. Sam Emilus has some underrated speed. I think he ran in the 4.5s coming out. So I don't think they necessarily need that guy, but there is some speed at receiver in this draft if the Riders elect to go that way.
Is there somewhere today a 7th round of Joe anywhere?
Ooh,
just a sneaky,
that's a really good question.
Sneaky pick, Dave. Maybe to you. Have you? I don't know how in depth you've gone.
Well, so I'm looking from a Saskatchewan Roughrider perspective. What was the message or motto, if you will, of the offseason? It was continuity and building on a foundation that was built. So if I'm the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and thank goodness I'm not, because if you saw any of the NFL drafts that I do, you'd understand why you do not want me having any part of player personnel. Saying that, though, I look at this draft as an opportunity for the Roughriders to build depth. And if you're going to go ahead and look at some of the guys that may not be ready just yet, there's always a guy you can draft and have them go back and play college football or youth sports football. And there's a number of those guys that I think fall into that category where they may not be ready now, but you can build their stock and maybe not have them this year, but then continue to replenish and move forward with them next year.
trades. We're not going to see anything, like the NFL draft. We're getting close to 4:00 here. We're going to see any trades like that, Justin?
You never really know until a team gets on the clock. I'm trying to remember the year that it was, but it was a while ago when Calgary traded up to select Pierre Lavertu, an offensive lineman out of Laval, first overall. And that literally happened, as the draft was just happening and starting on TSN, and then we're going on the clock. So teams, are calling around, trying to get the intel. And it's just like the NFL draft that you alluded to. We won't really know how they feel about some of these players until the Calgary Stampeders are officially, I know they kind of already are now, but are officially on the clock on TSN. If there's somebody that's really excited, for example, about a Taylor Elgersma that wants to come up, if they find out Calgary's not going to take them, then that could be a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we just never really know until teams are on the clock.
It was interesting to me at the CFL Combine that Dave Dickinson, when asked about that first pick, right? Obviously, he's not going to show his card saying, oh, well, we're definitely not going to trade it, or maybe we will entertain it. But the one thing that I got in the conversation that I had an opportunity to have with him was that they are looking for a player that they can put on their roster with the number 1 overall pick. So I have no idea who that might be, because again, the guys that I look at the top of the draft board, I would suggest probably going to take an NFL shot at very least this season. So I'm curious.
There's smoke screens out there, though. Like, that's the thing with some of this, right? Is you hear that and you see, for example, the CFL account is putting out a picture that just has Connor Shea and Keelan White in it. But based on talking to people today, they think that there's a chance, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but a strong chance that Tiger Shanks, the offensive lineman out of UNLV, could go first overall. Then there's another school of thought that says, well, Calgary has 2 first-round picks. There's nothing more that could create excitement in Calgary, and God knows they need it there with the Stampeders, than marketing a quarterback going number 1 overall. And oh, by the way, you have a second first-round pick where you can go and get an offensive lineman if you need one, or a receiver, right? Because those positions are deeper. It's not a super deep draft at those positions, but you'll be able to get a guy of pretty high caliber there. So I think there is credence to some of that, but I think Dave Dickinson was partly saying that to create a bit of a smokescreen, right? Because now everybody's focused on, okay, who are the guys that didn't get the NFL opportunities? Well, those are surely going to be the guys that go there, and Tiger Shanks falls into that category. But I'm just telling you from experience, because I've heard it from these guys in the past. They try to get you thinking different ways and off their beat.
Dave, how close will you be to the war room or whatever it's called? Will you be in there? Will you be just outside, glass to the wall? Like, what's your game plan?
Well, the buffet is going to be on the left side of the room, and actually across the hall, that's where the war room is for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So yeah, I'll be on the same level, just across from the hall, and as soon as the pick is made, I'll be right there.
You think, though, like, Justin, first to you, and then Dave, like, it'd be great to be a fly on the wall. Got to be a tug of war, right? Especially when you get into those later rounds, and you got a bunch of alpha males in a room, and they got ideas, and yeah, they're all on the same page, but there's got to be a lot of, we got to go here. My gut says, or things like that, right? The tug of war.
That's very team dependent. I'll give you an example with the Riders. Like, I've heard that Jeremy O'Day doesn't tell anyone, even his scouting staff, who he intends on picking. Part of that is because he doesn't want to get any leaks out there, and that's high in the draft. But the other part of that, I think, is just a really business-like approach from O'Day, that he sticks to his board, and it's not that debate on the clock like we would think it would be. I think there are times when that happens if a player is available that you didn't predict there in some of those later rounds. But then you talk about when you do get to those later rounds on other teams, it's not always the general manager making the pick on other teams. It could be somebody who is the Canadian draft coordinator, who's on the rise, who is being evaluated by the general manager, their thought process, how they are going about selecting this player in this position. If it's somebody that's fallen, or if it's somebody that they have really fallen in love with being on the road, scouting these players. So that to me is really intriguing. You might not get a lot out of the GMs in telling you about their process. But I'll tell you, I have heard that about O'Day, and I have heard that about other teams where they let some of the other people on the scouting staff make the picks in the later rounds.
That seems on brand, right, Dave?
Oh, absolutely. It does, for sure. And the one thing that I found, or even a conversation with Jeremy O'Day this week was he talked a little bit about their mock draft and how they do it. And so they've run a number of different scenarios on how their draft is going to go and who might be available when it comes for them to make a selection. And what I thought was really fascinating was that they go ahead and they mesh a mock draft with a mock depth chart. Right. So they see that Calgary is going to be picking number 1. Here are the guys that we think that they might take. Here is how that fits into their current depth chart with what they're aligning. And there are things that teams know right now that nobody else does. Like, for example, they know someone might be retiring tomorrow. Right. So now that affects the depth chart in the way that they would have gone ahead and set up their mock draft. So there are so many different scenarios that seem to have been planned for, or seem to be planned for by the Riders football operations team. And again, absolutely keep your cards right to your chest. That's what I would do if I was in his situation. And just the amount of planning that has gone in with the different scenarios that could unfold in front of them that have all been considered. And again, that's why I suck at NFL drafts, because I just plan while I'm driving to the event, right? So that's the problem.
Better late than never, Dave. Better late than never. Anything jump out in the I'm going to call it the Australian punter draft, also known as the international draft today, Justin?
Bro, you said it, man. Just like, I don't want to be rude, but I just hope Stuart Johnston's done with this whole global idea. Like, the thing to me is, fellas, it's like false hope for these guys. You only need one global on your roster, and we're out here like picking 2 every year. Now, I get it. Like, the Riders use 2. Dave laid that out in his piece that's up at sportscage.com, I thought, rather well. But like, it just hasn't had the return on investment for the league. I'm not saying these guys aren't legitimate and they shouldn't be in the league at all, but like, we're drafting and there's not even that many jobs to go around for them. And oh, by the way, they're also like compensated differently as well. Like, I think we should just put them on equal footing, either divide them up. If they played university ball in Canada, you're Canadian. If you come from anywhere else, you're an American. Make it even.
Dave, what do you know about the 2 fellas that were selected today by the Riders? I'm looking. We got Sylvain Jonjuan, a defensive lineman from Belgium. So you know he likes his probably his pints. First, he was 6 overall, and then Jesse Mirko, punter from Australia.
Well, Sylvain Jonjuan, who I actually went to YouTube to find out how they would pronounce that south of the border, but to me is interesting because what Jeremy O'Day told me yesterday, and the fact is when you're approaching the global draft, right? So you only have to have 1. The Riders play with 2. Habakkuk Baldonado is the other one. So when you draft that global, they have to come in and not only find a spot on the roster, but then they have to beat someone out. So you go ahead and you draft a defensive lineman. So again, there you go. You're following up in that depth role, even though you really don't need it for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And then the punter, you take the best guy available. He punted for 48 yards on average. He led the SEC. Again, his college numbers are outstanding. So why not take a flyer, even though you would consider both of those positions to be occupied on the current Saskatchewan Roughrider roster?
Okay, let's put a bow on this draft day. Justin, anything that you got that could be the big surprise today? Is it Elgersma? Is it Rourke? Anything else?
Man, we've talked about a lot of names, but I'm actually most curious to see where the next 2 quarterbacks go. And yes, I'm going to stick with the Canadians. That would be Jonathan Senecal, who's won a Heck Crichton Trophy with Montreal and a Vanier Cup in 2023, and Arnaud Desjardins, who, oh, by the way, has 2 Vanier Cups. So, Danny Machocha has come out and said, and I think it's a bit of a smokescreen, that, he's not going to pick Senecal, but he's shown over the years, and he's flat out said it, guys, that if it's even, and it's between a Quebecer and somebody else from this great country, that he's going with the Quebecer. So Jonathan Senecal would fit that mold. It would create so much excitement in Montreal. So that's what I'm looking to see. Is Danny Machocha, trying to throw us off his scent? And does he actually pick Senecal or not? And also Arnaud Desjardins. There are some people in the league that are really high on him and feel like he's been underrated. So perhaps I'll answer the question from earlier that I didn't answer, that maybe Arnaud Desjardins is a possible sleeper in this draft.
Dave, most intriguing thing for you. I know we're going to catch up in hour 2 and hour 3. What is it?
I'm curious the dip that they're going to put on the buff. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm really intrigued by the Saskatchewan prospects in this draft. Again, there are 6 players that play university football here in Saskatchewan. There's another trio that have got Saskatchewan roots in their football growth. So I'm really curious to see where they fit in, if they fit in, and how they fit in. Seth Hundeby up at the U of S. Again, he's a linebacker. His coach describes him as he's built like a defensive lineman. He plays linebacker, but can move like a defensive back. I'm curious to see whether or not there's going to be a spot or an opening. Of course, a couple of good Saskatchewan linemen as well there that could hear their names called today. So I'm really curious to see how the Saskatchewan content is going to go ahead and turn out, because Daniel Weeb, for example, undersized receiver from the U of S, also, again, had an outstanding combine, but again, you can't teach height, and that's maybe the one knock on him.
For me, the most intriguing thing, I'm waiting to see if any university kids were leaked a number, and I'm going to pull a prank on anyone about being drafted. All right, fellas. Exciting day. JD, thanks so much for making some time. We'll catch up. Appreciate you.
Thanks, boys. Enjoy.
And Dave, we'll talk to you in about an hour's time.
I'll be a half a wrap in for sure.
That's right. Double napkin. Don't get it stuck in that beard, right? You look sharp though. Suit guy today.